Did you mute me already, Paul?
I wish. I wish that had occurred to me.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the live reaction of the Buffalo Bills draft pick as they traded up a spot and gave up a 4th-round pick to take, what's this guy's name again? Oh, yeah, Dalton Kincaid, tight end out of Utah. We got Joe, we got Ryan here from Rock Sports Network. As always, you can find all of our stuff on our socials, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, as well as iTunes and Spotify. Tonight's show is sponsored by Mr. Rogers Homes. He'll be down in the description of the video when we're done with all this. First impressions of the pick. I want to start with Joe. We'll go to Ryan and then Paul because he's just stewing over there, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, I'm pretty upset.
I always talk to you guys before you come on live here. Like, I had very little expectations as far as what the Buffalo Bills were going to do in this draft. I want, if we want to talk about what we wanted, I want to trade down, get some more picks, that especially after the run of wide receivers that went off the board. But at the same time, what does this look like for our offense, right? We know that this Buffalo Bills team struggled in the red zone last season, and that's where this guy is going to be effective. And you think about the turnovers that Josh Allen had in the red zone. If those go away, we probably win the Jets game, right? And then, we're talking about a 1 seed instead of a 2 seed. Obviously, that would have mattered. That would have played into things a little bit differently. Now, we can't go backwards, but we can look forward. And we got, not only did we get the best tight end in the draft, but we got a top 15 talent at the 25th spot. Top 15 prospect. Now, we don't know how prospects are going to pan out. We never do. But at the same time, looking at it here, I find it very cynical of Bills fans. Seriously, right before we traded on Twitter, everywhere, I saw someone call Brandon Beane a coward for not trading up and getting one of these wide receivers, all this trash talk. And then he trades up and gets the guy that he wants. And now we're mad about that. Like, I swear, Bills fans, and this is fandom probably everywhere, but we're so cynical and we're so finicky. And if we don't get what we want, all of a sudden we get pissed off. And it's just calm down, I think back to the 2012 NFL draft with the Seattle Seahawks and how badly people graded that. And, who'd they get? They got 3 all pros, 3 Hall of Famers, and 2 Super Bowl appearances from that. So, I don't pay attention to draft grades. I don't know what the draft grade is going to be. As far as value goes, it's a good value. Let's think about value. It's a good value to get this guy where we got him. And, again, I wasn't expecting much. Tight end. What will Ken Dorsey do his second year as offensive coordinator? Will he continue to follow Dable's example and not use tight ends? If that's the case, then we might be in more trouble. But at the same time, if he decides to branch out a little bit and realize that, his offensive scheme didn't work the second half of last year, then maybe it could be a good fit.
I like it. Ryan, what do you got, bud?
Well, I'm going to start. I'm going to start with Joe. I'm going to counter. So for one, Brandon Beane has had 0 track record and 0 proof that he has any ability to draft offensive talent through the draft. So that's one, right? I mean, that's why there's cynicism there. Mm-hmm. However, I do enjoy the pick because I think you can argue that he was the best pass catching option in this draft when you combine the wide receivers and the tight ends. The wide receivers, there's 4 went right in a row. There were arguably 3 that probably should have gone in the first round. You could have made the argument that these 3 wide receivers in last year's draft would have been 3rd round picks, right? So I think Dalton Kincaid may arguably be the best pass catching talent in the draft. But he's a tight end on a team that doesn't throw the ball to tight ends historically. He's a different draft profile than what they've had at tight end before. And I think what Bills fans will find is that he's a different type of tight end than Dawson Knox. He's 6'4", 240 measurables. He's drawing comparables to Zach Ertz, right? I mean, he's a slot, tight end who's going to go box guys out. He's going to be a safety blanket for Allen, who's never had a safety blanket before. So I think it's a good move. I think it was good for Beane to go up. I mean, I was critical on Twitter after right after Johnston went. I tweeted out, I said, Beane's job is to go out and get talent at the wide receiver position for Josh Allen. He's got a stud wide receiver or a stud quarterback. I've said it on Drew on the Rock Power Report when I was on with Drew and Chris. I said, if you, as Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott, if Josh Allen gets to the age of 30 and you haven't been to the Super Bowl, it is an unmitigated failure. Your job is to put as much offensive talent around him as possible. They went out and they got the best tight end in the draft, arguably the best receiving prospect in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see if it pans out. I mean, Beane doesn't have a great track record, so I understand the cynicism, but I'm willing to give it a shot. I mean, I got, what is it on this way? Trust the process, right? I mean, they've done well with what they've had so far. And this is a step in the right direction where they're actually spending first round talent on an offensive weapon. So I'm fine with it. I don't like it, don't love it, don't hate it, but I'm fine with it. And I think everybody else should be fine with it too. And we'll see how they use them.
I will say I never mind jumping Dallas ever. Fuck that. Right. So I could say that confidently. Here's where I get caught, right? Because, you can look at where Buffalo was on the board. To me, like, I want to shore up. Buffalo had to help the offense, right? Like, I think we all knew Buffalo had to help the offense.
Yes.
But giving up picks to help the offense to jump Dallas, I think that pick gets you 2 picks higher to grab a receiver. You know what I mean? Like, I think at that value, it doesn't really matter, right? 4 receivers going all at once. I don't think Buffalo really planned on that. I think it kind of probably caught him a little bit off guard. And then the plan, I don't think this was the guy that they had circled on the board. I really don't.
I mean, you can't plan for it, right? When it's the first time in the common draft era that 4 wide receivers go
exactly right up until pick 20. If you're Buffalo, you're sitting pretty. You're like, man, this is. Woo.
But don't you sit there and say,
grab a cigar and like, woo, you're ready to go.
Don't you just sit there? Don't you just sit there and go, okay, if there's 4 guys that we're willing to take and there's 7 spots, we have to move. We have to move now. I mean,
you could say that.
It did never happen, but the thing with it, I'll get to you in a second, Joe.
Yeah, no,
the thing with it, I think we need to look at this as, okay, there were a lot of these wide receivers that are big play guys down the field that can do a lot of stuff. I understand that. However, all off season, we were talking about they need more weapons for Josh Allen and not necessarily receivers. This is another weapon that you've added, the best tight end in this draft. You had to move up 1 spot and give up a 4th round pick, where that's where they usually find those linebackers, corners type deal. And now I got to ask you guys this question, and I'll start it with Joe again. Do they have too much trust in the current players that are on the team? Because it seems like when you talk to everyone else, they need to get all these guys. Would you be okay with them giving 2 other picks to try to move up and get one of the wide receivers? Or are you content with having this weapon for Josh Allen? Now, somebody were like, they were putting Travis Kelce comps on him. I'm like, no, I think Ryan hit the nail on the head with Zach Ertz. But I don't want to. It's unfair. Like, they were comparing that defensive tackle from Pittsburgh, saying that he's the next Aaron Donald when they have the same measurables. I'm like, no, that's not how it works. I am the same size as Tremaine Edmonds. You're not going to confuse both of us on a football
compared
field.
Josh Allen to Ryan Leaf, and I felt that was unfair at the time as well. So throw that out there.
This guy did it. But Joe, what do you think about that? Would you be comfortable giving up another pick to try to get one of the wide receivers, or are you already just giving up a 4th for Kincaid?
So it takes 2 to tango, right? Those from 20 to 23, those weren't traded picks that went after the wide receiver. The Bills weren't going to trade it to up to 19, right? So 20, 21, 22, 23, that was our trade window. But no one traded up to get those wide receivers. So if those 4 teams knew, hey, we're getting a wide receiver, Beane could have called and done so much. But after a while, it's like, well, if they're not going to, do you guys want to overpay for a trade? No, you don't. So is it them trusting their players? I think that every GM, every coach, they're going to do they're going to talk the same way. They're going to say they trust their players. We all know what Brandon Beane said about trusting Gabe Davis. Does he mean it? Hopefully he does, because now he has to, right? Because the D-Hop thing's probably out the window now that we gave up a draft pick to get this guy. So hopefully he trusts Gabe Davis. Hopefully we spend day 2, in my opinion, getting offensive line help now for Josh Allen to find, the receivers that we have. Because unfortunately that's what we're stuck with. But does that necessarily mean that he trusts them? We've seen in the past, including this year, he brings back players that have been on the Bills before because he likes familiarity. So, I'm not surprised if he does trust these guys. Deservingly so, other than Stephon Diggs, I don't know.
The one to me, right, was when you looked at how the wide receivers went in this draft, JSN to Seattle is just too much value for them to pass up, right? Even though you still don't have a quarterback really, right? JSN is just too much value to give up. But then, Herbert's coming up on a contract, so you draft a wide receiver because Keenan Allen's mad old, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then Baltimore just got Lamar on the biggest contract for a quarterback. Well, let's throw another first round wide receiver, a position we're not going to be able to afford to get elsewhere, right? Like, we got to draft him. We can't afford it otherwise. The one that got me was, I think, you look at 23 and you say, well, maybe we could sneak in with Minnesota and grab Jordan Addison. But the fact of the matter is they just let Thielen go. So they got a gap there too, right? Yeah. So unfortunately, you could kind of peel back and see that this was the way that this was going to go, that this was a possibility. JSN being there at 20, it's just too much value for Seattle to pass up. And what were you going to do, right? Because the next pick right after Buffalo was Mozzie Smith, interior defensive lineman, and then Anton Harrison, the fourth tackle off the board. Like, if you're Buffalo, right, what were you going to do? Dalton Kincaid does make a lot of sense, as salty as I'm going to be about it for approximately the next 3 seasons.
Yeah, and you look at it, it's and the market gets set. I mean, we always like to talk about draft trades in the market, what happens within the draft itself. What is the market to trade up one? You just had the Giants go up one and they had to give up 2 picks. So the Bills only had to give up a 4th rounder. Okay. And what do? You get the best player at his position. I think if you told any Buffalo Bills fan coming into this draft, okay, you're going to get the best player at their position in the 1st round, and they'll be like, great. Yeah, I'll take that. But you didn't know the way that this draft felt. Ryan, I don't know if it's because we weren't live doing it at 34 Rush, but for me, this draft, it started to fall very weird with like a lot of these players. The Eagles had the biggest steal of the draft, I think. With the defensive tackle from Georgia. I can't remember his name right now, but he's an animal. From going 9 is ridiculous, but like it just seemed like the draft fell very, very weird this year. Did it feel like that way for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it was, you've got 2 running backs that go in the top 12, which hasn't happened in I can't remember how long.
It's been a bit. It's been a minute.
I mean, you had no wide receivers go in the top 19, which again, I can't remember the last time that's happened, if ever. It just wasn't, there was no pass catcher that jumped off the screen to you in this year's draft. And that in and of itself, I think, is an anomaly. And you add in, the uncertainty around the quarterbacks. Are any of these guys any good? You got Anthony Richardson going to the Colts because Josh Allen exists in a world. Like, that's why Anthony Richardson is going where he's going.
Yeah.
And then you had 3 offensive tackles. Like, when's the last time there were only 3 good offensive tackles in a draft that you could warrant taking a 1st round pick on? Yeah. And then you've got the entire AFC West. It's just like, we're just going to go out and get pass rushers to try to get at Patrick Mahomes because that's been working for the last 5 seasons, right? So I think it's just a combination of a lack of talent at the skill position. You get 2 running backs, and all of a sudden everything gets thrown into chaos. But I mean, you make a good point, Mario, right? Like, if you were to go into this draft and take all the names away and go to Bills Mafia and say, you're going to get the best pass catcher in this draft. I'm not going to say what position he's at, but he's the best pass catcher in the draft. Most of them would probably sign up for it. And you're going to say, well, you're going to have to give up your 4th round pick to do it. How many of us would say, no, I'm good. Just take whoever's there at 27. I think everyone to a man would say, okay, go get the best pass catcher for Josh Allen in this draft. Where they'd be in any other draft, I don't know. But when you hear these guys that are professional draft people comparing Kincaid to the likes of Ertz and Kelsey and those types of comparables, it should leave you encouraged, at least, that they may have at least taken the right guy. Now it's the coaching staff's job to use them the right way, and we'll see.
So I want to point out that 2017 is what you're talking about, because that was Fournette and McCaffrey. right? They were both top 10 picks.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was the last time. And it really hasn't even sniffed anything since then,
No,
right?
no.
And when you look at tight ends and you look at draft history, first round tight ends are just not all that common in current draft history, right? So Kyle Pitts was in 2021.
How about your
Right.
boy?
Well, hey, we're getting there. TJ Hawkinson and Noah Fant in
There it is.
2019. Hayden Hurst in 2018. OJ Howard, Evan Ingram, and David Njoku in 2017.
Wow.
So, but I mean, you look at that and you say, man, there's names I know, but not the impact player that you expect to get in the first round, right?
Now,
I think that's sort of the fear for me, is that I've seen what first round tight ends look like, and I'm not. We had one of these guys. He didn't make the roster. Like I'm not super impressed by that at this point.
Yeah, I think a big thing that I think people really need to know and figure out why guys become busts and why guys actually flourish is the system that they go into. And I think that's why a lot of Buffalo Bills Mafia, we have a little bit of apprehension in this because of the way that the tight ends have been used or lack thereof. I think, okay, he's Ryan said, best pass catcher in the draft right now. But how will that translate? Does that translate to 24 catches this year? And where, I understand giving Josh Allen another target and another safety blanket was what this draft was about. In the first round of this draft, whether or not you traded out with Arizona to try to get D-Hop or any other kind of scenario that you pictured, Zay Flowers, Johnston, any of those guys, you had to get a weapon for Josh Allen. Now, the fact that it was a tight end, I mean, everyone was like, oh, they went tight end first round. But is it something that will fast track the maturity of Dorsey in utilization of formations and tight ends with this? Because he can be a mismatch for you and allow Diggs and Davis to go on the outside and do a lot more things for you. Because if he ends up flourishing in the slot and you put Knox on the other side, now you have something that you didn't have before with Isaiah McKenzie and those smaller wide receivers. You have size in there now. So I don't know if how it's going to pan out, logistically on the field, but you do now have another weapon for Josh Allen. Did you go into this draft looking for that? Yeah. Do you have it now? Yes. Is it the person that you wanted all along? Well, maybe not, but I don't think we can be very, very upset with this pick for the Buffalo Bills.
I'm going to go to Joe on this one, but to be honest, you're looking at a $6.4 million cap figure for Dawson Knox this year, and then it skyrockets to $14.4 million, $15.4 million, and $15.9 million after that. So when I understand you drafted the best pass catcher available, right? Mm-hmm. I totally respect and understand that. But I think it does talk to that extension for Knox. I mean, right?
Can he play special teams, Paul? Sorry,
but
guys.
Joe, if you're an opposing defense now, right? Because Buffalo, the truth is, right now you can run Kincaid and Knox at the same time, and you're still running 21 personnel. And now you've just got a gigantic slot receiver in Kincaid. Does this give you the edge that you were missing last year?
In the red zone, it does. Well, in the red zone, it does. Again, it all depends on Ken Dorsey. I think back to watching some film of last year's games and how many times we saw two wide receivers in the same spot, right? How many times do we see two playmakers in the same location when Josh Allen throws up a ball? I think back to pre-murder Hernandez and Gronk, right? You think about those two tight end sets, and if they could run a system like that, then it's unstoppable. You can't do anything against that. But at the same time, I just don't know if I can trust Ken Dorsey to do that. So will this be a mismatch in the red zone? Absolutely. I think that he gives us a big mismatch against linebackers. Maybe even as we alluded to, he plays a slot of a bunch. So you're using a slot corner on the tight end. Well, then who's on our slot receiver, whoever that's going to be? Who's on that guy? And I think either way that creates some kind of mismatch because he's tall enough where your slot corner might not be able. He can get jump balls, right? Like you said, I think before you came on here, Paul, 2% drop rate last year. Was that it?
Yep.
2% drop rate.
Yep.
So he's taller than the cornerbacks. He's faster than the tight ends, and and he'll be able to open up, utilize the middle of the field pretty well. And so, yeah, no, I think it is a missing piece. Is it the missing piece? Maybe not. I think that, again, I think we still need a lot O-line help. I want to see some O-line help come tomorrow, but at the same time, we had to get weapons for Josh, and here we go.
And Mar, to that point, right?
Yeah.
Josh has a tendency to try and buy maybe just a little too much time in the pocket, right? Mm-hmm. So a weapon like Kincaid, is that the reason why Knox was sort of a forgotten man, right? Because with Knox, you're not waiting for routes to develop, right? He's a shorter target in that respect. Like the routes that he runs, he's typically the windows are smaller and you have to be a little bit more on top of that route. And Josh likes to buy himself time to try and hit the home run just all the time. Are we going to see similar problems with Kincaid as we saw with Knox, where Knox, again, it's not that he wasn't running routes. It's just by the time Josh got to him, there was just no productivity out of the route that he was running.
I think having a guy like Kincaid on your roster and the routes that he's going to be able to run for you will effectively alter the defenses that Josh is going to see in 2023. I think, if you want to talk about having an Isaiah McKenzie in the slot or a Cole Beasley in the slot, it's a very limited, skill set. You never really saw those guys run the seams. Mm-hmm. And with Kincaid, you can put a guy like that in there and Allen can put it up and he can go above somebody and get it if he needs to. You didn't really see that with Beasley and McKenzie, so it kind of limited the route tree that you had. So now that you have Kincaid in the slot, and even it might even open up more things for Dawson Knox underneath. And as far as Josh Allen's progressions, it might go Diggs, Kincaid, Knox, depending on the formation and the personnel that they have in there. So I thought of it, and thinking more of it, what's going on here. We have to remember that Bean and McDermott, they were down at Carolina for a while, and they had to face off against Jimmy Graham quite a bit. That murdered them. So if it went up to one of those things where they were talking to McDermott and going, what was some of the guys you had the most trouble with? Well, they've obviously up in Buffalo, they've had trouble with Kelsey. They've had trouble with Andrews, and some of these other tight ends that they had to face. So he may have taken a look at it and said, listen, if we can get another guy that has size and can catch the ball and can get open in space and has played the slot before, we don't need him to block. We don't need him to plot. We don't need Lee Smith there sealing the edge so we can run outside. Josh will eventually, in his progressions and growing as a quarterback, will finally find these guys and not have to run around so damn much. Mm-hmm. But obviously, like Joe said, it all hinges on Dorsey. It all hinges on Dorsey and how he's going to dial up certain things for Josh, and hopefully Josh will trust what he has for him in that process.
Well, I think if you put the right guy in the slot, and we saw this with Beasley, right? Like if you put the right guy in the slot, you don't necessarily need a scheme to get open, right? There's like three different ways you can get open in the slot. One is a great play call. The second is you just run a route that can't be guarded. We saw that with Beasley for the last 3 seasons, right? The other way is the way Kelsey wins a lot of times in the slot, which is just to get into the body of a smaller defender within that 5-yard window, create space and just push off and go to the flat or run your corner route or whatever you're going to run. And that's what Kincaid brings that Knox hasn't been able to. Knox just doesn't have the size to out muscle, your standard linebacker, big nickel, whatever you want to call these guys that drop into the slot now. Kincaid's going to be able to push these guys around at 240, so this may be a pick that it's like, just go get this guy, tell Dorsey to put him in the slot and tell the kid to get open in the red zone. And, and you think about the possibilities in the red zone, right? You've got Diggs, Gabe Davis on the outside. You can throw Kincaid in the slot. You can throw Cook in the slot and put Damian Harris behind Josh Allen. And it's like, good luck inside the 10-yard line. Like, how do you defend that type of personnel in the red zone? And maybe Knox just comes off the field in red zone situations. He's never been a huge red zone guy. He's good at getting into the end zone on deep passes and things like that, but he's not a typical red zone threat in that he's going to go create space and go win a contested ball. Mm-hmm. So, maybe that's your personnel in the red zone. You just get, Shakir comes off the field, Knox comes off the field, and you just go, best man at the position, add Harris in the backfield. And it's like, good luck on the read option. And you just trust that Allen's either going to run it in himself or he's going to find the right guy.
And Ryan, you make a great point there, right? Because when Knox had success in the red zone, it was often on misdirection, right? Like it was just him just being sneaky in short routes. So the times that Knox was effective, it was often on misdirection. But again, you make a point of comparing, comparing this draft pick to Kelsey, and I think it's an interesting conversation because to me, when I look at this, I look at a tight end that's still just a little small by comparison to Kelsey. I mean, Kelsey's just an absolute monster, but linebackers are getting smaller now. And that's why you see players like Drew Sanders, and Jack Campbell be coveted because of their size and their speed combination. Linebackers are getting smaller in the NFL. So tight ends are kind of getting bigger, because you have to take advantage of that mismatch. At Buffalo, I get why the pick is the pick, right? I do. I get why the pick is the pick, but you just have to ask yourself, is this the difference maker, right? Or is Buffalo not done? Because I still see Gabe Davis walking into a contract year. Stephon Diggs is another year older. And then after that, the cupboard's empty as far as I'm concerned, right? I like the upside of Shakir, but the fact of the matter is we saw him for 30 receptions. Is that what he pulled last year? Like nothing of serviceable note. And, it's an interesting thought to think that Kincaid's a difference maker. I can't put my finger on the pulse and say that they were active enough in free agency to be able to secure that line to get Allen the time that he needs. And in the draft, you didn't do that either yet. And I don't think they're going to find value across that offensive line later in the draft. I just don't.
No, I don't think they will. But the thing that it earmarks for me, guys, and I'm going to go back to it again with Dorsey, is the fact that I think it's put up or shut up time for him. Because what it opens up to, and we were talking about personnel, you can go in 22 personnel with Hines and Cook, and you could put Knox and Kincaid on the field. And if you're a defensive coordinator and you're coming out and they're which they haven't done a lot, gone 22 personnel, it opens up a whole new facet of your playbook. And Paul, what do we always talk about every week with the Buffalo Bills is when they seem to have a lot of explosiveness is when they tend to change something up. When they change something up, they end up having a lot of, explosive plays and, they're putting up a lot of points. Opening up more of 22 personnel, 2 backs, 2 tight ends will do a lot more. And it'll show teams in 2023 more looks that they haven't seen out of the Buffalo Bills before. And usually when they went 22 personnel, it was Knox and, Morris. No one's really, scared of him. So now you're going to have put people on the field. I mean, even if they just tried to go to a trips bunch and you got Knox, Kincaid, and Davis in the trips bunch, who's covering that? Like really? And you put Diggs on the other side. You say, okay, Diggs is one upped. This is what you got to do. So, I mean, going back to Ryan's point, I think you got the best pass catcher in the draft in the first round. I think you added a weapon for Josh Allen. All of that combined. Let's see what the Buffalo Bills do for the rest of this draft. Obviously down a pick because they had to give up their 4th rounder. But I think all in all, it was a successful pick. And we'll just have to see how it pans out and how Dorsey is able to work with Kincaid.
I mean, Kincaid is definitely a guy that attacks the ball, right? Like if there's something you could say about him, he attacks the football. I think that was one thing that I think a lot of Bills fans got frustrated with Knox, right? Was that he was really passive in those situations.
Let the ball come to him.
Yeah, he's very passive
You
in
can't
those
do that in the
situations.
NFL.
Yeah, and Kincaid's just totally different. He straight attacks the football. So I'm excited to see that. But again, am I excited to see it for 46 targets this year? Like, I don't, I don't know about that. If he catches 46 passes on 46 targets, I'd be happy.
If it was 46 catches and 8 of them were touchdowns?
If they both had 50 catches, I'd be impressed this season. If they both had 50 catches apiece, that would be impressive. Because how are you going to cover that come playoff time? Like who are you going to man up? Who are you going to do? I mean, what was it, a couple of years ago? They tried shutting down Diggs. Diggs had 2 catches for 7 yards, and that's the Gabe Davis breakout game. So it's what? Oh crap! Oh, and by the way, Eagles with their 2nd pick took Nolan Smith. So they're just drafting everybody from Georgia apparently. So we'll see. We'll see what they do for the next round. But
Beantown Breakdown mentions the AFC East is going to be real interesting this year, boys. Hey, quick question on that. Let's play off of that. Does the addition of Aaron Rodgers to the Jets change the way that Buffalo approaches? The Jets have a lot of weapons, man. They got a lot of weapons.
They do have a lot of weapons. I think the fact that the Jets and the Patriots both went defense in the first round tells you about the types of the types of talent that's in the AFC East. So
Rodgers doesn't move the needle for me. I have zero concerns over a 40-year-old quarterback coming off of a significant injury. He wasn't any good before the injury, frankly. And they still don't have an offensive line that can protect anybody. And Rodgers, I mean, who you're running away from at the age of 40?
I just want to know.
You're running away from at the age of 40.
I just want to know what
mushrooms.
Loans? I just want to know what mushrooms he ate in the woods that told him to go play for the Jets.
If he had problems with the media in Green Bay, like New York, oh my gosh.
Oh god!
But I was laughing as we were talking about AFC East teams and just wondering how Miami did in the first round. Then remembered, oh yeah, that's right.
Whoops.
Whoops.
So all right, really quick, we're going to be back tomorrow. We're going to cover live reaction of the Bills' second and third round picks. Like I said, we're on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find us on iTunes and Spotify. Tonight's show is sponsored by Mr. Rogers Homes. One last go around, Joe, Ryan, and Paul. Joe, I mean, after the discussion tonight, do you feel more about the pick? Or did you cross over to Paul's dark side? I mean, how are you feeling about the Kincaid pick for the Buffalo Bills in round 1 of the 2023 draft?
Well, one thing I did want to say real quick is we didn't give teams reason to worry about our running attack anymore. Like, I mean, they still don't have to worry about us running the ball with this pick. I'm still where I was. Like, we'll see how it plays out. And, like you said, it's all about Ken Dorsey. It's all about how we use them. We have the best pass catching player in the draft. What we're going to do with them. So I would probably say this is a B- draft grade for me. That's where I'm at. Okay.
Ryan, what do you got, bud?
Yeah, I mean, I'll reserve judgment until we see what the rest of the draft unfolds. Now, they come out of round 2 with, I don't know, Drew Sanders to fix your linebacking problem, and you go get another wide receiver in, Jalen Hyatt, something like that in the third round. I'm going to feel a hell of a lot better than what I do tonight. You come out of it with, an interior offensive lineman and, I don't know what, an edge rusher. I'm probably not going to feel as good about things because I'm a very firm believer that you just need to go get weapons. I mean, that's what Kansas City's been doing. That's what these teams do to go get better. You don't worry about the defense, right? And that's a tough thing for McDermott to get over the hump with. But Andy Reid hasn't had a good defense in 5 seasons, and he's got 2 Super Bowl rings to show for it. So surround your unicorn with weapons, and let's go get it. So again, I think a lot of it's going to depend on tomorrow, and we'll be back tomorrow to talk about that at the end. We'll see what they do with it, but I'll give the pick right now. I'll give it a B+ because I think Kincaid, again, he's the best pass catcher in the draft. That's what you came in here hoping for. They didn't give up a hell of a lot to go get him. I think Bean trusted his board, but we'll see.
Before you go, Paul, a lot of people were down on the Cincinnati Bengals when they took Chase and Penei Sewell was on the board.
Mm-hmm.
They went to the Super Bowl that year. So just a little message for some of y'all, that when they want to take interior offensive linemen or tackles or stuff or something, would you rather have the 4th tackle off the board, or are you happy with this pick? Paul, did we convince you yet that Kincaid's going to be okay, or what?
It's not. It's literally not as much about the player as it is about the missed opportunity, right? Because I think if you were in the game of trading a pick, I don't think Detroit was so in love with Jack Campbell that they sit at 18. I don't think, the Bucks are so in love with Kancey that they sit at 19. Like there was a wall of teams that were likely going to take a wide receiver, and you just kind of stayed patient. And I guess that's where sometimes I get really frustrated with Bean, is that he's really conservative in nature. He likes to feel it out, likes to see where things go. I do think that was probably that's where I'm going to remain to be frustrated, right? Was that Because again, I don't think the cost was prohibitive enough, knowing what we know now, right? And I know it's always really easy to look at this and say, hey, knowing what we know now, we should have traded to 18 or 19, but I think there's a valid point to be made there. You want to hunt, you go out and you hunt. And I really just stand to remain that, this team is still just not fast enough on offense, right? That remains to be my problem with it. So I'm fine with it, given that they kind of let the draft fall to them and again moved up to jump Dallas here. Okay, right. I'll go B-, just because you still got the best player at the position in the draft, right? But the fact that you let the opportunity go to improve a position of dire need is frustrating to me. If you look at the backside of this draft in the second and third rounds, there's Ryan just said it. You look, there's Drew Sanders, and then there's everybody else. Yep. There's a big drop off. And I'll be honest with you, Drew Sanders is not exactly a great coverage linebacker. So he's a converted pass rusher, man.
And maybe the answer, who knows? Maybe the answer is Brian Branch, right? I mean, there's guys there in the second round that if you want to go. And I think what I want to do is I want to see the piece of paper that Bean pulls out of his pocket tonight and sets on the counter when he gets home, right? And does it say Dalton Kincaid no matter what? Because he said in the press conference while we were on, I was reading the transcript from the press conference. He said he got antsy when Kincaid was there and he was behind Dallas. So I
don't blame him. Dallas absolutely would have pulled the trigger on him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe it was Kincaid the whole way. That's entirely possible. They met with every single one of these wide receivers, and Drew from the Rock Power Report, he made a good point on the show where he talked about they've done more due diligence on wide receivers this year than they have any other year. And they've met with a lot of guys that are day 1, day 2, day 3 guys. Maybe they just decided that they could get an equal talent day 2 and said, we're just going to go get the best position, best pass catching option on the board, or maybe best offensive player on the board. I mean, who knows? Maybe if Gibbs was there, maybe that would have been the pick. But I think it was a concerted effort and a reason that they didn't go get a wide receiver, but a reason that they did ultimately wind up going to get Kincaid.
And it may not have just been Dallas. Like, Mark, you and I have talked about this a bunch, right? Most teams only have 17, 18 players marked as first-round picks. So those teams that trade up, often there's only 1 or 2 of those guys left, right?
Yeah.
So that's often the trade-up. Dallas is a great excuse, isn't it? That's a great excuse.
Oh, you just can't. I don't know another team outside the Jets that Paul hates more than Dallas. I really don't.
Any chance to screw over Dallas to take it.
Absolutely,
so
100%.
I hate them.
So guys, make sure you join us tomorrow for round 2 and round 3 coverage for Joe, Ryan, and Paul. Hey, we'd like to give a special shout out to the Houston Texans for taking a quarterback and a linebacker in the first round. Hey, way to copy us, guys. Good job.
But we didn't have to do it. 2 and 3.
No, it was 7 and 16, I believe. But thank you guys for joining us. #Nation. We'll be back tomorrow. Make sure you join us. See you later.
Hello, fellow Bills fans. Sean Rogers, realtor and lead of the Mr. Rogers Homes team. Did you know that real estate is one of the best ways to build wealth, and right now is one of the best times to own an investment property in Arizona? Please reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to answer any of your questions so we can take the next step to your financial freedom here in the Valley of the Sun, utilizing real estate. As always, God bless America and go Buffalo!